welcome back to the Bites and Bytes Podcast. I'm your host, Kristin King. This is the show where we explore the systems, technology, and human realities behind food and agriculture, and sometimes the risks that we don't see until they hit us hard. Today, we're joined by James Slaby, Director of OT Solutions, Go-to-Market at Acronis. James has spent more than 2 decades analyzing and working in cybersecurity, networking, and industrial technologies. In this conversation, we're going to dig into the systems that quietly produce our food. Legacy equipment, air-gapped networks, ancient operating systems still controlling real-world machinery, and what happens when modern cyber threats collide with outdated infrastructure. We also talk about deepfakes, social engineering, recovery planning, and how everyday people, not just IT teams, are becoming part of the threat landscape. So let's get into it. Enjoy. Well, as always, before anybody introduces themselves, we're going to go into favorite food and favorite food memory. James, they do not need to be the same thing. Go for it.
Sure. So I'm originally a native of Buffalo, New York, and like the rest of my extended family, many of whom are still in that area, I'm kind of obsessed with buffalo wings. And
of course.
But something I discovered, which really surprised me, is that there's a superior gloss on the fried chicken wing, and that is Korean style fried chicken. What they do, I've concluded, that makes it even better than my beloved original buffalo wings is that they do a 2-step fry. They first fry the wings in low temperature oil to cook them all the way through. And then they do a second fry in higher temperature oil to crisp the skin. And then they'll hand paint on, there's many sauces, but the 2 most popular ones are gochujang, which is the Korean version of hot sauce. It's slightly funky, slightly sweet flavor in addition to the capsaicin heat. And then
delicious
soy garlic. And this is now my go-to. If I show up for like a Super Bowl party or barbecue or something, I'll bring a big bucket of these. And in particular, my friends' kids go absolutely crazy for the KOFC, I call it. So that's it. So I'm always down for traditional buffalo wings. My local watering hole in downtown Boston is a 100-year-old Irish pub. Same family has run it the whole time. They do beautiful chicken wings. Shout out to JJ Foley's Cafe in Boston South End. Koreans have figured out a modest improvement that I think is really worth checking out if you get the chance.
Yes, I definitely would agree. There is a superior level of fried chicken in that area of the world. The Japanese are also quite good at it too.
Karaage is, I'm really digging karaage chicken these days too.
Yeah, it really is. I feel like a little side of that with your ramen is just like the perfect meal, like super comforting, the whole thing.
100%.
I haven't had that in a minute. I should probably get that. Yeah, I totally understand this. My stepsons are connoisseurs of fried chicken and chicken sandwiches and anything to do with chicken that's breaded in general. And they even have said something similar. Like, it's just the best chicken, like how it's fried the way it is. It's kind of like a triple cooked chips or fries for us Americans in the UK. There's just something about it.
Absolutely. My own kind of home cooking efforts always run up against that. It's either not cooked all the way through or it's overdone. And I think that 2-step process kind of solves all problems there.
Yes, for sure. And so your favorite food memory then?
I thought long and hard about this. I wasn't a super adventurous eater as a child. I was kind of scared of most things, but I really trusted my dad. And he was a kind of a 3 a.m. snacker, and I was a light sleeper. So I would sometimes hear him stirring in the kitchen in the middle of the night, and I would go down and, this is me 4 or 5 years old in my jammies, and he'd be up making some kind of snack that was clearly evocative of the nostalgia of his youth. And my one sort of fondest memory of those late night meetings with my dad was he would make a sandwich of tinned sardines, raw onions, and yellow mustard on white bread.
Wow, that's intense.
So, those were some beautiful moments along with my dad. I'm from a big family. There were 8 of us all together. And so the, 10 minutes of time to himself with just sitting there quietly in the kitchen with nothing on but the fluorescent light coming from the stove top are really cherished memories for me. And I since concluded that while I got braver about food as I got older, particularly as I started traveling internationally for work, that all my dad's favorites were very umami packed. So things like sardines and pickled herring and calf's liver. I was the only one of my 5 brothers and sisters that liked liver. And I've since realized I was like an umami hound. And traveling abroad for work, particularly places like China, where a foreign guest would get the red carpet rolled out for them and served an elaborate banquet meal with all the delicious delicacies. And, the locals would say, look, you got to eat everything. You don't want to insult our host's hospitality. And the rule I learned was, don't tell me what it is, and then you won't run up against any of my cultural prejudices against, I don't know, sea snake or a stag pizzle soup. Or if I didn't know what it was, then I'd go, oh, this is delicious. And then I found out afterwards what it was. I'd be like, oh, I would have had a real hard time eating that if I'd known what it was beforehand. So that travel really broke all my old inhibitions about trying new things that I had as a little kid. But I often, I will still occasionally make that sardine onion mustard sandwich and think of my dad, who's gone some years now.
It's amazing how food can transport you memory-wise. I just recently lost my grandfather, and a cup of coffee makes me think of him. So every morning I sit with Grandpa and I have a cup of coffee, essentially. And I love that. It used to be really sad, but now I love it because it's something nobody can take away from me. It's like a complete memory, just like the sardine mustard sandwich and onion. Sorry, I forgot about the onion, the pungency of all that. Right. Yeah, it's really beautiful. And you're so right about traveling abroad. I think that's when my palate really opened up. I think a lot of people probably say the same thing. When I went to China for the first time, I actually decided to do myself a real good service. And I went to a food street tour my first night in. So I got used to the textures and the flavorings and understood where things were coming from. Ended up being a really fun group. I remember thinking, if I didn't do this, I wouldn't have survived the trip at all. Also, pro tip, if you don't want to eat anything you don't know, just tell people you're vegetarian. It usually covers most everything anyways. So yeah, that's what I ended up doing a couple times when I was like, I don't know about this. Just like, I'm a vegetarian. And they're like, oh, no problem. And actually the vegetables are amazing anyway. So it was totally fine. And also the rice and all the things. And also I'm really grateful that I learned how to use chopsticks before I went as well, because that level me up quite a bit in the eyes of my hosts and was able to navigate through things successfully. Except I had to ask questions like, how do you eat a fried egg with chopsticks? That was kind of wild. And they taught me how to tear it with the chopsticks and things like that. And that later served on when I was in Japan quite frequently. I could just survive. So yeah, there's like these little things that you kind of pick up as you go and fix your palate and learn how to eat the food properly. Because there's such an etiquette in how you eat as well in these places that can be really offensive if you do it wrong too. But yeah, China definitely opened up my horizons with food. And to this day, I don't think I've had food that even rivals it in some ways, because we don't really make it in the States the same, obviously. Maybe a few places, but nothing really formal. But yeah, I do miss a couple things for sure. But that's fantastic. Thank you for sharing that memory. And that's really beautiful. Thanks, James. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone that's listening? Because now they've already heard that we're foodies, so that's clear.
Yeah, so food nerds is my preferred term. Use that to remind myself that, like any nerd of any stripe, we're useful to know when you have a problem to solve. Like, okay, I've got vegetarian, halal, and meat and potatoes eaters. What's one place that can serve all their needs? It's like, oh, I've got several suggestions for you there. But also, like nerds, we can be painful to get cornered with at a cocktail party and droning on and on about our latest cooking excursions or restaurant experiences. So James Slaby, I'm the director of cyber protection at Acronis. My core responsibilities these days are around our operational technology solution. So Acronis is in the business of endpoint security, backup disaster recovery, and remote endpoint management. And that gets used by our customers around the world in a bunch of different ways. So one example is managed service providers, who are basically IT outsourcers for small businesses, use our platform to serve as the IT and cybersecurity department for small businesses. A large chunk of our business goes out that way. And then there's our OT business, which is quietly kind of our big success story in the enterprise. And what we do is provide cyber resilience for PC-based platforms in OT environments. So SCADA systems, HMIs, data historians, any Windows or Linux-based system that's used to control lower-level technology like sensors, actuators, programmable logic controllers, IoT devices, on and on and on like that. Our other kind of great strength there is our partnerships. Most of the major automation vendors in the world use Acronis as their OT resilience solution so they are either reference selling us, white labeling us, or co-branding our solution to their customers, saying, look, if you want to keep our automation equipment, minimize downtime, you want to tick this box on your order, and then they get Acronis. Having their kind of endorsement, having tested and field tested our technology and referring to it is probably our biggest strength. There's a challenge being a company whose much of their business is in IT, going into operational technology environments. Like, what do you know about agriculture? What do you know about mining? What do you know about robotic logistics warehouses? You're in IT in those kind of office environments or home office environments. And that's a legitimate criticism of a lot of vendors in our space. But we've been around for over 20 years and working in industrial environments for that long. But the best endorsement of that is the kind of people who use us, that reference us. Think of like Emerson and Rockwell and Yokogawa and ABB. These are all among the kind of giants of industrial automation worldwide, and having their endorsement, their arm around us, really gives us a lot of credibility up in that space.
That's great. Thank you for that introduction. How did you get into this company? Where did you come from before? Give me a little bit of your background so we can lead the listeners to why we're talking.
So my career has kind of two halves. I started as a systems engineer in the networking business in the early days of the build out of internet infrastructure worldwide. So I worked for one of the two big router companies, and I went from systems engineer to product manager to product marketing person, and from product marketing into solutions and vertical marketing. And doing that for a number of networking vendors and later cybersecurity vendors, that's probably half my career. The other half I've spent as an industry analyst at companies like Forrester Research, the bygone Yankee Group, and some smaller boutique kind of research companies, initially covering networking and the later cybersecurity. That's what I was doing before I joined Acronis. I was at a boutique house called HFS Research and writing about cloud security. This is a little over 10 years ago. And the challenge there was convincing enterprise buyers that the cloud was a safe place to play, that there was still resistance at that time to moving your sensitive data into the cloud. And my research basically showed that, they're actually better at cybersecurity than you are. So you're probably okay to start taking advantages of the scale and cost economies of SaaS and cloud computing. So Acronis hired me originally to help them with some demand gen problems, but then they took their first splash in the cybersecurity pool, and I was one of a handful of people in the company who had a cybersecurity background. So they moved me into a product marketing role. That evolved into a solutions marketing role. After some years of being far too quiet about our OT story, they decided that we should really tell the world more about that. And that's the kind of role that I'm in now, is kind of educating our customers, our prospects about what we're doing in OT. Historically, we're famous for backup and security, but on the IT side of the house.
And it's interesting that you spent time talking about moving to the cloud for enterprise, and now the conversation of moving to the cloud for OT is happening, and everybody is anti it for the moment, and that's okay. I understand the on-prem bit and how important that is. So in a way, you've kind of recycled your career a bit, because here we go. We're into this whole new section of cloud-based OT and ICS. And I don't mean everybody needs to switch there, and that's a big debate for another show, but it is definitely something that's on the horizon, and especially when it comes to different critical infrastructure that's mobile and moving, logistics, transportation, agriculture, seafood fleets, you name it. Those are going to require cloud for quite a bit of things, especially when you take into account the ability to have more real-time data and make better decisions. That's going to be an interesting moment. And at the moment, I'm proceeding and I'm cautiously optimistic about it, but also I completely understand the on-prem moment because it's much easier to go unplug something if something goes wrong than it is to shut down the cloud. I mean, really can't shut down the cloud. Yeah, adopting is going to be really interesting in these different sectors, I think, coming up, James. You just made me go very curious in my mind. I was like, yeah, that's really interesting because I just had this conversation a couple of days ago with a utility company and how they're really anti-cloud because they can't control it, they feel, as much as they can with on-prem. The cyber physical aspects are very much a real thing, even for the practitioners who manage and run. It's not just what you do in the digital world has an impact on the physical world. We need to be able to impact the physical world if we have something that we feel is going to cause a problem as well. So thank you for making me go down that rabbit hole in my mind while you were talking, because that's exactly what I was like, oh.
I think it's a really trenchant point right now in that we really have to meet our customers wherever they are on that adoption curve.
Okay, quick pause, because James just mentioned a couple things that people in operational technology, or OT, say casually, but everyone else hears it like someone suddenly switched the podcast into Klingon. Let me translate. First up, the Purdue model. Think of it like a very structured, layered cake. At the top, you've got your business systems, so your email, billing, accounting, all the non-glamorous things that make up a company. At the bottom layer are the systems that directly interact with the physical world. The machines, the sensors, and controls that actually move product, keep temperature stable, grind feed, pump water, and run a packaging line. And the whole point is everything has its place, and those layers aren't supposed to mix freely. You don't want someone in the office accidentally interacting with the same network that controls your refrigeration system. Just like you don't mix raw chicken juice with cake frosting. Same energy. Next term, air-gapped. This one is literal. The system is physically isolated from the internet. No Wi-Fi, no cloud, no remote connection, nothing. It's like a walk-in cooler with no outside door. If you want access, you have to already be inside the building. Great for reducing cyber risk, terrible when you need urgent help and your IT person is 3 states away. And then we get into the big one. Why OT systems don't patch like your phone or your laptop. In OT, patching can break things, not metaphorically, but physically. Control system might be running on a 15 to 20-year-old operating system because it controls a mixer or an evaporator or a bottle line, and the vendor qualified software hasn't been updated in a decade. Updating it might introduce a glitch, remove support for a driver, or change timing, and in OT, timing matters. It's not negligence, it's just reality. If you patch something that's been quietly running a pasteurizer since 2005, you might not just break the software, you might break the pasteurizer and the cheese and the day everyone's working there. So when James talks about stability, long life cycles, and not poking things until you're absolutely needing to, that's why. OT lives firmly in the category of please don't touch that unless something is actually on fire. Because in food and agriculture, touching the wrong system at the wrong time can cause downtime, spoilage, food safety issues, employee safety issues, and a very awkward call explaining why your cold storage suddenly isn't cold. All right, back to James.
For instance, one thing that we do that is allow for a completely premise-based solution. So if you're doing Purdue model segmentation or air gapping, that's not a problem for us. So you find that many tech solutions now require management from a cloud-based console. And that's not going to fly in an air-gapped environment. It's going to be very difficult if you're Purdue-based. But we also have customers who have started opening up those environments. So, for instance, we're able to feed into a kind of a corporate central console with information about OT environments at factories, say, that are scattered around the world. And it's a one-way feed for a lot of these folks. They don't want to break Purdue in doing it, but we can help them do that. And because we integrate data protection backup with cybersecurity, we can pull them along into better endpoint protection as they open things up more and open up attack surfaces to things like ransomware that they didn't have to really worry about when they had the kind of the castle with the moat kind of approach to security.
Yes, I completely get that. I feel like sometimes that's the good old days and we all wish for that again. But here we are in a new digital world where anybody can pretty much touch you at any time, which is terrifying in itself. And I can't take those rose-tinted glasses off. We all see it for what it is now. So, and this is just to swing back just a tad. I have so many thoughts here. How do you like being in the OTICS space? Because you didn't come originally from there. I think a lot of us who are in OTICS, generally speaking, came out of IT back in the day. But how do you like being on the OTICS side a little bit more than you were before? Do you feel welcomed? Are you enjoying it? I have lots of opinions, obviously, but I would love to hear yours.
Well, it's completely fascinating to me because, who wants to kind of chug along in the same lane in technology forever? It's kind of one of the great things about being in tech is that there's some kind of transformative wave that comes along every few years, and you've got to kind of constantly be learning, right? We're all sharks, right? If we slow down, we will die. But I particularly love digging into the industrial side of things. I think about kind of my roots. I have a family who are farmers. So this is cousins and second cousins and uncles and great uncles in Broome County and Shenango County, New York. This is kind of upstate New York near the Pennsylvania line. And, getting together with that family in those days meant paying horseback riding. One uncle was cattle breeder. So when you went to get the adults a beer, you had to make sure to go to the right refrigerator in the kitchen because the other one was full with stuff that wasn't for human use. And,
I got you.
I've kind of grown away from that. My folks moved to New England and I became, the city kid with the job in networking and cybersecurity, which, was a little better understood nowadays. But early in my career, it was sort of impossible to explain to people who weren't in tech what the heck it was that we did. And so, but again, there's also some reuse of challenges. You alluded to this transition from the kind of premise-based computing to the cloud. And there is a similar kind of transition going on here and similar difficulties. Absolutely understand the resistance. Like you've spent your whole career making sure that nothing messes with this great automation setup that you have where downtime is extremely expensive. Tinkering is really discouraged, right? Let alone opening up the environment to potential new threats. So these are concerns that I understand and have heard before. And frankly, we're in a period where we haven't figured out all the issues yet. And we're starting to see really ominous shifts in the threat environment where critical infrastructure, which ag is now considered a part of by cybersecurity standards bodies and national governments, is really increasingly becoming targeted. I don't know how much you talk about attacks on the show, but I just look at, there's been a bunch of them over in recent years, and they seem to be growing. Probably the JBS attack, I think, is the one that probably most people who aren't in tech are probably aware of. But, I don't want to, I can reiterate a bunch of them. I imagine this is something that your audience is familiar with.
We do talk about it quite frequently. And I think that they're great examples, but I always say they're the known ones. Yes. It's the unknown that scare me half to death because those big corporations had to, because they're publicly traded, because the SEC regulations. So of course we're going to find out about them, but we don't know always what the issues are. Like the Amazon distribution one, that one that supplied for Whole Foods. We don't know what happened, but it reads like ransomware. We can speculate based on, knowledge of the industry, but they have not disclosed what it was. And I feel like there should be some type of disclosure within these particular rules that tells you what it is. How are you going to prepare an industry for something if we don't know what it is? Just an attack that's like saying Godzilla attacked and you're just that's it. You don't know how he attacked, where he came from. Was it another creature involved? We don't know. We just know that it happened. So I think we're doing a bit of a disservice to the food and ag industry by not having more disclosure. And then on top of it, if there's small, medium-sized farms or different CPGs or small businesses and things like that, we don't know if they got hit. It's kind of word of mouth, it's community. And as you know, James, there's a lot of shame that comes with being at an attack. So people don't want to talk about it. And then if you are in food and ag, it's an OT issue as well as an IT issue, generally speaking, because everything intersects with the physical world. The incidents that are happening are becoming more frequent. Yes. I think that it's an iceberg issue. I think that we see just the small tip of what's actually going on. Also, we have nation states that are involved. The dairy industry has been getting punched in the face literally lately. And now we've had loss of life. Cows are passing because they don't have access to real-time data when they're distressed. So there's a lot of things going on here. And also we have, the ag tech community that's innovative and excited and pushing forward and all this great investment, and they're not doing it securely. It's not secure by design. So we've got these other things that are being added where different considerations for security have to be put into place. But again, this falls back onto places that don't have teams, don't have OT, don't have a SIEM, don't have a SOC, don't have a NOC, don't have any of this stuff. And it's just, Mr. and Mrs. Farmers that are standing there going, I need to put this wearable on my cow so I know when it's going to drop a calf. And is it secure? I don't know. It connects to my phone. Is my phone secure? I assume. And there's all these questions around that. And I don't want people in food and agriculture, this is my biggest fear, to just put their heads in the sand like an ostrich. I want people to be informed on risk and blend it into their safety practices as much as possible. Have their stop, drop, roll type moments, because these are the people that feed us. This is what creates our memories of our childhood and various other aspects of our lives. The idea of that being attacked is so disturbing to me and viscerally disturbing. Like, I am horrified by it every day. And these people that have to be resilient in a different capacity than already they're doing, because being a farmer is very complicated and hard nowadays. And it's not an easy path. And we need more first-gen farmers, and it's really hard to get in. And there's all these different parts of the ag business that are just a lot. It's a lot. And then you want to add a cybersecurity level onto it. I understand in a lot of ways why mental health is such a huge issue in that particular industry, and why I continually talk about this, and why I advocate, and why I have this show, and why I work with the industry the way I do. Because we need more people to come along and make it normal. Like, it's normal to talk about an attack. It's normal to talk about what we got to do to fix it. Or it's normal to have a resilience conversation. So, you can bypass you and you could survive whatever happens. And that's the real trick of it. And again, like I said, going back to your original statement, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more going on, and it's scary. There's so many little nuances to this, and I'm glad that people are waking up that agriculture is part of critical infrastructure, even though the US didn't add it to the list until 2020. I still don't know why they didn't add it sooner. Everybody else had it on there. But I think that the more people who get educated in what agriculture is and what the business is, it's not as simple as people think it is. It looks simple for the most part. People make it look easy, but it's not. And also, it's such a big industry. It's an industry-wide big thing. It's not just the small farms. It's also, the grain silos, and it's the distribution networks, and it's the transportation that goes around it. It's the cold storage. The cold storage is like a whole thing. That's getting attacked too. And it's wild to me that as OT, we are very much system thinkers. What something happens over here, it happens over here. And yet we're the weirdos because nobody actually thinks like that. Apparently that's not common, as people remind me all the time, because I'm like, well, why didn't people realize that if they had this, it's cause and effect? Why wouldn't they? And they're like, oh, well, you're a nerd, basically, back at me. And I'm like, I didn't realize that's what it was. And I'm sure, and you already strike me as a systems thinker, James. So I think that you completely get what I'm saying. And maybe that's why you've taken to OT quite well, like a fish in water. It's definitely something that you're enjoying. I can tell you're enjoying because the way you talk about it. So that's great. I'm glad that you can pull from your roots. You understand what farming looks like. How else are we going to have great food stories and culture and tradition if we don't have people doing that and keep doing it securely? And I don't think that every farmer needs to go out and take a cybersecurity course necessarily. I don't know if we're quite there yet. We might be at that tipping point, but I don't know. It's going to be hard because we're going to have to adapt tech that we have for them in that regard. Yeah, sure. Food manufacturing, absolutely. You can have all the bells and whistles and all the things. The CPG is the same thing. To have it on a farm level is going to be complicated and really takes some real ingenuity to create something that can give a better monitoring experience. I don't think we're quite there yet. I think we're getting there. I just wish that ag tech would start creating things more securely. That would be my one wish. If people ask me what my wish was for the world, ag tech creates things securely so farmers don't have to worry. Break, and thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to like, comment, follow, and share it with someone who'd appreciate it. Every bit of support helps more people find these conversations, and I'm so grateful for all the messages, all the feedback, and all the stories you've been sending. Thank you for reaching out and letting me know how much the show has resonated with you. And because we're heading into the holiday season, I want to encourage you to help where you can. Donate to a local food pantry. You could find one at findhelp.org. Call a local farm and ask if you can sponsor a farm share for a family in need. It's easy to find a place to start by going to localharvest.org. Reach out to a local school and see if you could support them for breakfast or lunch, or just be a grocery buddy for someone nearby who could use the help. Food insecurity isn't just an American issue, it's worldwide. And while I'm not sponsored by any of these organizations, I believe if we have tools or resources, we can use them to make sure people have access to food. Thank you for caring, and back to the episode.
It's funny, when you talk about the psychological aspect of it, that really plays to something important that I've seen going on in recent years. Again, Acronis started as a backup company, and then we got into the cybersecurity business and coined this term cyber protection, which was the idea that defense and recovery should be integrated. I've kind of seen the world come around to that. If you look at recent editions of cybersecurity regulations or recent revs of cybersecurity standards, or you look at the requirements that you're getting from your insurance company if you want a cyber insurance policy to help mitigate the cost of recovering from a ransomware attack, for instance. They have all placed this new emphasis on recovery. So if you look at NIST CSF 2.0, the NIS2 regulations in the EU, or you've talked to your insurer recently, a few years ago, they were all about make sure you're using multi-factor authentication and that you're encrypting your data and that you have antivirus protection. Now, there are new planks in those standards and those regulations in those insurance requirements that say, make sure you're following industry best practices for backup. Have an incident response plan in place. Think about disaster recovery. And this kind of recovery capability in OT takes on new dimensions.
Yes.
The downtime costs tend to be much, much greater, right? So the idea of being able to recover very quickly is important. Another issue that you have is you don't have trained IT people around in many of these environments. You're out on an oil rig, or you're in a mine at the edge of the jungle, or a remote distribution facility, or you're in a farm in the heartland. You don't have IT people who are, at your beck and call. And if you are air gapped for security reasons, people that might be able to help you with the remote tools, say try to come RDP into your desktop, they can't do that. Right. Another issue that you've got is the equipment life cycles involved in OT. This technology is designed to last 10, 20, even 30 years, whereas IT people are used to cycling through stuff every 3 to 5 years, doing constant updates. In many OT environments, we see Windows XP PCs being used to control the environment, or really ancient builds of Linux. And you don't want to update those or patch them if you can help it, because you might lose some functionality or break your ability to monitor or control or configure the lower level operational technology. So stability is super, super important in these environments. So one of the ways that we address this is that we never walked away from those old operating systems. Another big issue is, how do you recover if IT is hours or days away? We've made it simple enough that you can basically do a recovery from a local backup, and the ability to restore from a known working image uncorrupted by ransomware or without the update that you just did that broke something, and to do that in a matter of minutes. That's super, super valuable, right? When the clock is ticking on that. Kind of grappling with those realities of operational technology environments has really deal with these kind of requirements where it's like, what's your story for backup? How quickly can you recover? What is your plan in the event of a cyber attack or a hardware failure, or somebody plugging something into the machine like a USB stick that they shouldn't? And this gets more important as these environments open up, and as just in general, the threat environment has gotten more dire. I know you're well familiar with the kind of the ongoing industrialization of cybercrime, and how that's meant that it's cheaper to mount more and more frequent attacks. The sophistication is getting higher. Now we've got Gen AI tools being used by the bad guys, so that phishing attacks are getting more effective, right? The phishing emails are perfect, and the calls to action are more compelling, and they can mount them at greater scale. So all these things, these pressures are starting to come to bear on OT environments. So you need to start thinking about improving your cyber defenses, but your last line of defense always is the ability to quickly recover, right? So you want to do as much as you can to reduce the risk of cyber threats with defensive measures. But our adversaries are generally a step ahead of us, and again, can enlist armies of not very bright people to do most of the dirty work for them in ways that we can't possibly keep up with the frequency and the growing sophistication of the attacks. So you really need that break glass in case of emergency recovery mechanism.
Yeah, I think it's super important to note the backup aspect. Like in JBS's example, if they were able to come back up faster, and they couldn't because that was broken as well. So there was a lot of aspects about it. I think the thing about food and agriculture that I've noticed more and more is the social engineering component. You already mentioned phishing as a great example. Doxing is super popular now too. Deep fakes are heavy in the industry as well. And AI is driving that. It's learned behavior. For everything that is good, it's also equally evil. It's really just there. And I think the social engineering aspects around OT are going to hit a breaking point at some point. I think we are definitely at a place now where educating people on how to behave and how to be defensive as well as responsive is becoming, I think, more of the norm. We're not quite there yet, but I think people are getting it. And that makes me really happy because when we go to things like backups and being more proactive, it's going to be a lot more easy to adopt moving forward. And yeah, there's some really nasty people out there doing really horrible things, obviously. And it's so scary that you could just dial it up as a service now. Just hacking as a service, ransomware as a service, whatever you want to call it, is terrifying. And you're right, they're ahead of us in a lot of ways because we're still playing catch up. We don't know what's in our systems. We don't have asset control. We don't understand who's accessing when. There's all these different aspects. Or you don't have any people. You mentioned that earlier. There's no people to do the work. So it's left up to people who aren't technical to deal with it. And they're just trying to get by. And that's really the heart of the matter, especially in food and ag.
I recently had the family password conversation with my extended family. We were all together for a kind of a reunion. And the concern I had was around deepfake technology, particularly around voice, which is extremely easy to do.
Yes.
And the scenario I painted was grandma gets a phone call from someone who sounds exactly like one of her grandchildren who's saying, oh, I was in a car accident and they put me in jail and I need money to bail me out. I don't want to spend the weekend in jail, grandma. Can you help me out? And of course, that's not my nephew. That is a deep fake of his voice, which you only need about a 30-second audio sample to do a convincing deep fake. So now everyone in my family knows a passphrase that they can challenge a caller in a dire situation like this and say, what's the family passphrase? And if they don't know it, then they know it's a fake. So I've been spreading that stratagem around my extended family and friends.
It's an excellent strategy. It's an excellent strategy, and it should be updated annually as well. You should have a different one every time. Basic human behavior 101 base. And it's such an easy thing to do and such a simple thing. And that doesn't necessarily imply just for those phone calls and those scams. It could be if you're out and about and you have an emergency, you could just say the password and people will know that you're in trouble. Those kind of things. It also goes into those places. Sadly, I think we live in a world where we're going to all need those for various reasons at some point, and it's a good thing. So that's an excellent thing to do with your family. James, this has been a great conversation, and I have really enjoyed your wisdom because you're speaking truth to a lot of things that are happening, and you have a really good vision of what's going on and what needs to be done. So thank you so much for that. As we're leaving, any final words?
Sure, Kristin. I just want to say likewise, what a great pleasure it's been to be part of your podcast.
Thanks so much, James.
Thanks again, Kristin.
To wrap up today's episode, a big thanks to James for joining me and sharing his perspectives on the realities of inside the systems in critical infrastructure. And to you, thank you for listening, for sharing, and for being a part of the community. If you enjoyed today's episode, remember to like, comment, follow, and share. It really helps others find the show and keep these conversations growing. You can also check out my Substack and the Bites and Bytes Podcast website for additional content, behind-the-scenes updates, and reflections on the various episodes. The link is in the show notes. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.